Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1989 crime drama Family Business. Now, this is a film that, to me personally, it's a massive letdown. It's easily one of the most disappointing films I think I've seen in regards to the cast and its director. I was curious about this film for the longest time because of the cast. I mean, you got Sean Connery, you got Dustin Hoffman, you got Matthew Broderick, as well as the director and Sidney Lumet, who's done a lot of great films and done a lot of great work. I mean, he did Network, he did Serpico. Even after this, he did underrated films like Q&A. And you would think that with this cast and with this director, that you could have a potential classic or at least an above average film. The expectations I had for this was above average at the very least, and this film went shockingly below that. And that is something that really puzzles me. And it just goes to show you can have a great cast and a great director, but it doesn't always mean that you're going to have a great film. So it came out in 1989 in December, and it didn't do very well. It made, I think, around $12 million. And I don't know exactly what the budget is, but considering this cast, it probably was a little bit more than that just to get this cast involved. And it debuted sixth in the box office when it came out, which isn't a very good turnout. I don't think TriStar was very happy with the results of this film's box office. It did better on home video, but I get it. It's kind of a hard sell. I personally feel the trailer wasn't very good. It kind of paints the film as a little bit of a comedy at times, and there are some moments in this movie that are humorous that can make you chuckle a little bit because of the banter between the characters, but it's not a comedy. So that's a little bit of a false advertising on the trailer's part. And I can see why audiences didn't flock to see it, because it's just a really forgettable film. It's one of those movies where you watch it because there's nothing else on, or you watch it because it's on the TV and you're too lazy to get up and shut it off. And there's still enough that kind of keeps you interested in seeing how it's going to end. But that's it. And mainly it's for the cast. You want to watch it because you want to continue to see these three actors perform and deliver some genuinely solid, if not great, performances. Sidney Lumet is the director of this, and like I said earlier, he's done a lot of great films. But I wouldn't really call this one of his best efforts when it comes to directing. It's honestly rather bland. There's not a lot of life to it. There's not a lot of energy to the direction. At times, it seems really stock and standard. I don't really feel that he gets that much out of it. For a guy who can do some really dynamic films in terms of direction, this is not one of those movies. And that being said, it's not like the direction is bad. I would say the direction is one of the better aspects of this movie, but it's average at best. I would say the best thing about his direction in this film is how he's able to really hone and get the best performances out of his cast. And that isn't necessarily due to the fact that he's such a great director on the set. What he does, which is really smart, by the way, and more directors should consider doing this for their projects, he gets his cast, he signs them, he has them together, and he ends up bringing them to a warehouse or to a area where it is possible to house the entire cast, and has them do a rehearsal of the entire movie for 3 weeks before they start shooting. So these actors can really get into their roles, can really add even more context to their performances, and make it so when they start shooting, it's not an instance of them trying to just bring the character out for the first time. They already know what to do. They've been living and breathing as this character for 3 weeks. It just makes it so it's a more seamless transition. And the performances are easily the best ingredient of this film. In particular by Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, and Matthew Broderick. The rest of the cast is fine too, but the main cast is those three, and they are the foundation of the film, and they do an admirable job trying to prop the film up and trying to keep it above water. But even their performances aren't enough to save this movie from drowning in its mediocrity and its forgettableness. And it's too bad because I honestly like the performances quite a bit. In particular, I really like Sean Connery's character, Jesse McMullen, this hard nosed, take no prisoners, gruff grandfather who lived a life of crime and is a charismatic but ultimately bad influence on his grandson, Adam McMullen, played by Matthew Broderick, who had a sense of innocence and naivete that definitely lent a lot of credibility to the performance and to the role of this young science grad who's in over his head in a business of crime, and because he's exposed to it and he knows the potential rewards and knows the excitement that comes with it, he wants to be a part of that. He wants to be a part of the family business because making an honest living is boring and doesn't always lead to you getting what you want. Dustin Hoffman is also in fine form as Vito McMullen, Adam's father, who quit his life of crime and is trying to make an honest living as a meat packing giant. And he gets thrown into this whole thing because he's got a midlife crisis and he wants to be closer to his son. And yeah, it's the three of these guys. They really do deliver fine performances, um, and are quite sterling in a lot of ways. That's what makes this so disappointing, is because you have some legends in the business, at least at this particular time. And Matthew Broderick, of course, would go on to do a lot of questionable roles after this, but this isn't one of them. And I mean, at least you got Sean Connery and Dustin Hoffman. Like, those are two absolute legends. And you got a legendary director in Sidney Lumet. And you just got a film that goes in one ear, in one eye, and out the other. It's just you just watch it and then you forget about it. The rest of the cast is fine too. I mean, you got Rossanna DeSoto, who plays Elaine McMullen. You got Victoria Jackson from SNL as Christine, who plays Adam's girlfriend. Bill McCutcheon as Danny Doheny, the bar owner. Deborah Rush plays Michelle Dempsey, Adam's lawyer. You also have B.D. Wong in the film as Jimmy Choo. And you have James Tolkan, who plays a judge who sentences Jesse later in the film. You also have Luis Guzman in what has to be one of his earliest roles as Torres, a disgruntled employee of Vito's meatpacking plant who gets mad at Vito for shortchanging him and not really paying him enough. So he decides to go out on his own and steal beef and sell it on the black market. Vito finds out about it and confronts him. and they get in a fight, and Dustin Hoffman beats the shit out of him. But yeah, it was fun to see Luis Guzman in an early role like that. But this is Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, and Matthew Broderick's show. I mean, Sidney Lumet wanted Matthew Broderick from the beginning because he wanted to work with him. Dustin Hoffman, I think, was already his first choice to play Vito, and the studio wanted Sean Connery because they felt that even though age-wise, it's not very believable that Sean Connery is the father of Dustin Hoffman, but they thought that Sean Connery was one of the only actors who could pull this character off of Jesse McMullen, who is a career criminal. He's a bad guy. So, in order to have the plot thread of Jesse McMullen rubbing off on Adam and convincing him to join in a life of crime, they had to have a actor who was charismatic and had a personality that had something that you could believe that a young, smart individual like Adam McMullen would be drawn to. And it was perfect casting. Sean Connery is a pretty bad guy in this, but he's likable. You can't help but want to have a beer with the guy, or somehow be acquaintances with him, despite the fact that you can't trust him. And so, yeah, cast is easily the strongest suit of this movie. The score by Kai Coleman, or Cy Coleman. What was this score? This score sounds like a big band score from a gangster movie from the 50s or 60s or even earlier. It doesn't match with the tone of this film at all. It really doesn't. There are scenes in this movie that are supposed to be more serious. Like, for instance, when Matthew Broderick's character Adam has to turn himself into the police, you have this score in the background that sounds like it's more upbeat. It's got this upbeat feel and tone to it, and a little bit of comedy, and that doesn't work because he's turning himself into the police. He's ruining his life at this moment. His scholarships, his ability to really make a mark on a potential future career, he's throwing that all away by having to turn himself into the police because he took part in a robbery. And you have this music that just doesn't fit the tone at all, and that continues at other times throughout the film. At the end of the movie, which is it's supposed to be a tearjerker and a really sad moment, the music plays over the end credits and it's upbeat again. And it's literally after ashes were thrown off the side of a building and they're getting blown off by the wind. And then you got this music that just does not suit the mood, does not fit it in any way, shape, or form. It's just a puzzling, baffling score. The cinematography by Andres Barchowak is really nothing special, and this is a guy who's done a lot of really impressive cinematography. Like, he's done a lot of good stuff, and he's also directed some films, like Romeo Must Die, Cradle to the Grave, Exit Wounds. I mean, he also did Street Fighter Legend of Chun-Li, but, I mean, that doesn't take away from the fact that he's a talented cinematographer. And his cinematography is just as flat and tired as the direction by Sidney Lumet. The editing by Andrew Monshine, it's there, I guess. It's nothing that spectacular. And now we get to the main problem. What in my opinion is the main flaw in this film's foundation, and it's the script. The screenplay by Vincent Patrick. Now, Vincent Patrick apparently wrote the novel that this film is based on, and if you ask me, this is one of those movies that could have really benefited from a fresh, new take on the story. Instead of having the guy who's so tied into the story do a film version of this, they should have had someone else. Or if they're going to have him, have another person who lends their perspective as well. Because at times it does have this teleplay kind of vibe. It does have this vibe of this is a script written by a guy who wrote a book and hasn't done a whole lot of screenwriting. He's done some screenwriting credits for Beverly Hills Cop, which is uncredited, Godfather Part 3, which that's not really a good thing that he's responsible for writing or being a part of writing that. But I will say this, even as flawed and as bad as that movie is, it's a much better screenplay than Vincent Patrick's work for this. I don't know if the certain plot threads and the elements that play out in this movie are in the book, but if they are, they should have been changed for the film. And this is a movie that's like from 1989, so if I'm spoiling anything, so be it. But in order to really discuss how flawed and how bad this screenplay is, I have to spoil things. So the whole crux and the center of this film's conflict, and the center of the film period, is about this caper, about this robbery, where Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, and Matthew Broderick team up for a robbery. And the reason why they decide to do this is Adam McMullen, Matthew Broderick, he heard through the grapevine from somebody that there's a job that could pay $1 million. And the job is, you have the character played by B.D. Wong, Jimmy Chu, who is a former professor of Adam at a college that he went to. So he hears about Jimmy Chu and how he was let go by this corporation or this company that he was working for, and he was the head of this group who was experimenting with plasmids and with cloning technology and so on and so forth. And he made a major breakthrough, and instead of giving him the credit, instead of promoting him, the business fired him, screwed him over, and now he wants the plasmids back and the notebooks so he can get his revenge, and so he can take what's rightfully his and start up his own company. So Matthew Broderick hears about this, sees an easy way to make some money, so he gets a hold of his con grandfather, Jesse McMullen, played by Sean Connery, and lets him know about this. And I think he was planning on doing it anyway, but he wanted to get some help and some advice from Jesse. And keep in mind, Jesse is on probation, technically, because, well, actually he's out on bail because he beat up a police officer earlier in the movie. So Sean Connery, he decides to take Adam under his wing and teach him the tricks of the crime trade. Well, his Matthew Broderick's father, Dustin Hoffman, Vito McMullen, he's been trying to keep him out of the crime loop for years, and is trying to get him to break off ties with his father, Jesse, and to not go through with this. But eventually he reluctantly agrees to be a part of this crime in order to keep an eye on Adam and to add a little more experience. So they go to the facility, they break in the most uninspiring, bland, boring way possible. There's no grappling hooks or rappelling down the side of the building or using a blowtorch or cutting through the glass. There's nothing unique or interesting. Adam just has a stolen key card and he swipes it and they go in. That's all that happens. And they're dressed in black and they got panties on their heads with holes cut in them. They tie up the guard. Adam takes his sweet time trying to find the room where the plasmids are in because he doesn't know the layout. And so there's multiple scenes of him comically opening the door, looking around, realizing it's not there, closing the door, and then that is repeated over and over again until he finds the right room. Grabs the plasmids. He takes a look at the notebooks, sees what's going on in them, and goes, huh, that's interesting. But like a fucking dumbass, he leaves the notebooks, and this is where the script really starts to lose me. Because the reason why this other plot point even happens, or is even possible, that's very integral to the twist and the overall denouement of the movie, is absolutely preposterous and unrealistic. So anyway, like a dumbass, he forgets the notebooks. So while they're on their way to their getaway car, they realize, oh fuck, forgot the notebooks. So Adam decides to go in and get them. Well, continuing his stupidity, he doesn't use the key card on one of the doors, which causes the silent alarm to go off. The police are now on their way. He gets the notebooks. The silent alarm has been off for a while, goes out the door, realizes the cops are coming, and he can't make a run for it to the getaway car, so he just throws the notebooks across the intersection close to where the getaway car is and Sean Connery and Dustin Hoffman's characters, and he turns himself into the police. Well, you find out in the twist later that Jimmy Choo was setting this whole thing up because he's got his job back and there was no plasmids. It was just water with food coloring, and the notebooks weren't really anything either because they made no progress. They got $80 million that was granted to them, but they weren't able to make enough progress to bring this product to investors on time. So in order to buy more time, they set up this elaborate plan to screw over Matthew Broderick's character Adam and the rest of his family by creating this fake demand for a product and offering a fake reward. That's your caper plot. They don't steal anything. The only thing they steal is your time, because you're like, why did I waste my time with this movie? Why did I waste my time? What, the buildup is wasted because, oh, it's the whole will they, won't they kind of thing, and then they get together and they do it, and it's the buildup is wasted because they don't steal anything. Matthew Broderick's character, like I said earlier, this whole plan relies on him being an idiot, which doesn't make any sense considering he's a science grad from an established and highly accomplished science college. Why the hell is he so dumb that he looks at the notebooks he's supposed to take and forgets it, and then on top of that doesn't use the key card to get out one of the doors when he remembered to do that previously when he first broke into the facility, but he's not able to remember that the second time around? And all of this plan hinges upon that. It hinges upon Matthew Broderick being a dumbass. And that's stupid. And it's not realistic. And if that isn't bad enough, I mean, the movie opens up with a really boring scene of Matthew Broderick's character Adam meeting up with his dad Vito at a Jewish Seder or something, and it's played completely straight with no unique camera work, no unique lines of dialogue or edits or takes. It's just flat direction, as it's almost as if it's just a home movie of someone's Seder. And I'm like, I got no context for this, and why should I care? And there's a lot of stuff like that where it's trying to, I guess, trying to build some sort of homey feel, but it doesn't really work because, like I said, there's no context to any of it. There's not one, but there's two Irish wakes in this film. And in both instances, you have a whole group of people singing Danny Boy. I guess Sidney Lumet or Vincent Patrick were huge fans of that song, or I guess they wanted to be incredibly Irish. I don't know why, but both instances do occur in this movie. One about halfway through the film, and one at the end of the movie. And speaking of the ending of the movie, this ending, it comes out of left field, smacks you right in the face, and then punches you right in the balls or your genitals. If you're not a man. But anyway, it's just one of those things that's just like, why? Why did they end like this? So Jesse ends up getting the worst of it. He gets sentenced by Judge Strickland to 25 years in prison, which is a death sentence for a man his age. Vito gets let off with probation, and so does Matthew Broderick's character, Adam. They both get supervised probation for a few years. This causes the relationship between Adam and Vito to splinter even further. Adam decides to keep on keeping an eye on his grandfather because he's more of a father figure to him than his father ever was. And the film sets it up as if Sean Connery's going to have no problem in prison. He's been there before. He can handle his own. There's a scene where while he's being transported to prison, some guy's messing with him, and then he kicks his ass, and it's a really fun scene, and you're like, yep, he's gonna be fine. But then what seems like only in a matter of a couple sequences later, and 6 months later, by the way, after we saw him kicking some guy's ass and looking right as rain, now he's like in really bad health. He's dying, and he's in a prison hospital in a wheelchair, looking disheveled. And then soon after that, he dies. In some really half-hearted attempt to make you sympathize with Jesse, or to deliver some sort of tearjerker moment, but it doesn't work because it comes across as contrived and half-assed. And why? Why was that necessary? Why? I guess that was the only way they thought they could get Matthew Broderick and Dustin Hoffman's characters back together to fix their flaws in the relationship, is to have Jesse McMullen die. And that's the scene I'm talking about, where they pour his ashes over the side of a building and then the upbeat music plays. If they're trying to go for a wake, okay, maybe. But they already sang Danny Boy, and then the music it still just does not match with the imagery of ashes blowing away in the wind. It's such a frustrating film because so many things about this have so much potential, and so much of it is completely and utterly wasted and thrown away. But this movie apparently was not well received by critics. A lot of critics didn't like it for the same reasons that I wasn't a fan of the film. It's also not very well paced in terms of its level of excitement or intrigue. There's a lot of moments where it really just starts to lose you, and you start looking at your watch. It doesn't help either that the caper is boring, and then it's also pointless because they didn't steal a thing. And then you have the ending, which is far out of left field and insulting and just aggravating, especially since I liked the character of Jesse McMullen. Sean Connery delivered a great performance. I liked watching that performance. That's one of the few reasons why I was able to sit through this movie in one sitting. And then he dies. I guess just because he got old and he was in prison. He was the epitome of fit and health. Beat the fuck out of a guy before he went to prison. And now he's like, and then dies. This is like a balloon that's full of air, and it's like about to go soaring into the sky, but then the air just comes out of the balloon, and it just falls down to earth. Just makes that noise too that goes with it. That's really a great way to sum up Family Business. It's one of those balloons that just gets all the air let out of it. So I don't know what else to say about the movie. I probably said more about the film than I thought it was going to, but at the same time, I thought this was going to be a decent uh, review in terms of length because of the fact that I had a lot to say about it. And it's just one of those movies where I didn't hate it. I didn't find it to be an absolute piece of shit, but it was incredibly disappointing considering the cast and the director. And in a lot of ways, that's worse. That's way worse than a film that is just a complete and total misfire in every direction. Because there's actual potential here. This isn't a movie that was going to be 99.9% a piece of shit. It wasn't one of those films. So, in a lot of ways, these films, in my opinion, are worse. They're worse than some of the worst films that I've seen because of the potential that is wasted and lost. But I would only recommend this if you're a diehard fan of Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, or Matthew Broderick, or Sidney Lumet, or the idea sounds interesting to you, or so on and so forth. If not, I honestly would skip it. You're not missing much. And if you're a fan of the film, cool. To each their own. I have no problem with that. Like I said, and I've said many times over, different opinions are what keeps this world interesting. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Family Business. And as always, I will see you later. See ya.